Mr. Cool. Chapter 1. Ricky wanted to be a rock star. He was brilliant at singing. He was brilliant at dancing. He looked brilliant too. Ricky had floppy fair hair that fell into his blue eyes. Ricky always wore blue denim. Ricky looked cool. Mickey wanted to be a rock star. He was terrific at singing. He was terrific at dancing. He looked terrific too. Mickey had long red hair and wicked green eyes. Mickey always wore black. Mickey looked cool. Nicky wanted to be a rock star. He was fantastic at singing. He was fantastic at dancing. He looked fantastic too. Nicky had curly black hair and big brown eyes. Nicky always wore leather. Nicky looked cool. Kevin wanted to be a rock star. He wasn't great at singing. He wasn't great at dancing. He didn't look great either. Kevin had straight mousy hair and grey eyes. Kevin always wore a jumper, knitted by his nan, and tracksuit bottoms. Kevin didn't look cool, but he had a great smile. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky formed a band. "Can I be in the band too?" asked Kevin. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky weren't sure. "You're a nice guy, Kevin, but you're not that great at singing," said Ricky. Kevin smiled bravely. Ricky felt bad. "We do like you, Kevin, but you're not that great at dancing," said Mickey. Kevin smiled bravely. Mickey felt bad. "You can't help it, Kevin. You just don't look cool," said Nicky. Kevin smiled bravely. Nicky felt bad. "I wish I could be in your band," said Kevin, still smiling. "Go on, you guys. Let me be in the band. I'll try hard at singing. I'll try hard at dancing. I'll try hard to look cool." Ricky and Mickey and Nicky still weren't sure. "My nan's got a basement," said Kevin. "We could practice there. My nan won't mind a bit." Ricky and Mickey and Nicky didn't have a good place to practice. Ricky lived in a bungalow. Ricky's mum and dad moaned and groaned when the boys in the band started playing. Mickey lived in a house with a lot of pets. All the pets howled and yowled when the boys in the band started playing. Nicky lived in a flat. Nicky's neighbours came to his door and huffed and puffed when the boys in the band started playing. "Could we practice in your nan's basement any time?" Ricky asked Kevin. "You bet," said Kevin. "Right," said Ricky. "You can be in the band then, Kevin. OK, Mickey?" "OK with me," said Mickey. "OK, Nicky?" "OK with me," said Nicky. "Count yourself one of the band, Kevin," said Ricky. "Great," said Kevin, and he smiled and smiled and smiled. Chapter 2. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin practiced every night in Kevin's nan's basement. Kevin's nan brought them drinks and chocolate biscuits. The band practised and practised and practised. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky got even better at singing. Kevin still wasn't that great at singing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky got even better at dancing. Kevin still wasn't that great at dancing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky all looked super cool. Kevin didn't look cool at all. But Ricky and Mickey and Nicky didn't want to push Kevin out of the band. They liked Kevin, and they needed a place to practice in Kevin's nan's basement. It was Kevin's nan who got the boys their first gig. "My friend goes to the club. They want a band for Saturday night. I said I know a very good band. Okay with you, boys?" said Kevin's nan. "Okay with me," said Ricky. "Okay with me," said Mickey. "Okay with me," said Nicky. "Great," said Kevin. "Thanks, Nan." The band practised even harder for their Saturday night gig. "What shall we call our band?" said Ricky. "How about Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin?" said Kevin. "That doesn't sound very cool, Kevin," said Ricky. "I'm not a very cool guy," said Kevin. "Not like you, Ricky. You're a real cool guy. And you, Mickey. You're a real Mr. Cool too. And you, Nicky. Yet another Mr. Cool." "Mr. Cool," said Ricky. He snapped his fingers. "Brilliant name." "Mr. Cool," said Mickey. He snapped his fingers. "Terrific name." "Mr. Cool," said Nicky. He snapped his fingers. "Fantastic name." "Mr. Cool," said Kevin. He tried to snap his fingers, but they got stuck. It didn't matter. "Great," said Kevin, and he smiled and smiled and smiled. So the boys called the band Mr. Cool. They didn't feel very cool just before their first gig. Ricky had problems with his voice. Mickey had problems with his feet. Nicky had problems with his hair. Kevin had lots and lots and lots of problems. "We're rubbish," said Ricky, Mickey and Nicky. "We can't go on." "I'm rubbish," said Kevin. "But you guys are brilliant, terrific, fantastic. We're going to go on, and we're going to be great." So, Mr. Cool played their first gig. They were great. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were brilliant at singing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were terrific at dancing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky looked fantastic. Kevin still wasn't great at singing or dancing. Kevin still didn't look great either, but he had a great smile. And all the people in the club smiled too. They clapped and cheered when the band took a bow. Mr. Cool was a big success. Chapter 3. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin played at the club every Saturday night. They were asked to play at lots of other clubs too, and colleges and bars. They even did a gig at a birthday party, but that was just for Kevin's nan. Then one night a man called Mr. Rich came to hear the boys play. Mr. Rich was well known in the music world. The boys were very nervous when they spotted Mr. Rich. "Don't worry, guys," said Kevin. We'll be great." Kevin smiled, and Ricky and Mickey and Nicky smiled back. They did their act in front of Mr. Rich. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were brilliant at singing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were terrific at dancing. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky looked fantastic too. Kevin wasn't great at singing. Kevin wasn't great at dancing. Kevin didn't look great either, in spite of his new knitted jumper. "You were incredible," said Mr. Rich. "You're a great band. I want to sign you up. Well, I want 3 of you." He pointed at Ricky. He pointed at Mickey. He pointed at Nicky. He didn't point at Kevin. He shook his head. "Sorry, lad," said Mr. Rich to Kevin. "I don't want you in the band." Kevin stopped smiling. He nodded sadly and walked away. "Hang on, Kevin," said Ricky. "You're part of Mr. Cool. I say you take all 4 of us, Mr. Rich, or none of us. Okay with you, boys?" "Okay with me," said Mickey. "Okay with me," said Nicky. Kevin didn't say anything, but he smiled. "Okay with me too," said Mr. Rich, sighing. Mr. Rich groomed the boys for stardom. They made their first album. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were brilliant at singing on their first Mr. Cool album. Kevin wasn't that great. He sang very softly. They made their first video. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were terrific at dancing on their first Mr. Cool video. Kevin wasn't that great. He danced out of camera shot a lot of the time. They posed for their first Mr. Cool photo shoot. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky looked fantastic, really super cool. Kevin didn't look great. He stood behind the other boys. Mr. Rich set up a big concert tour for Mr. Cool. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky were so nervous. Even Mr. Rich was a little bit nervous, but Kevin told them not to worry. "Stay cool, you guys," he said. "They'll think we're great. You'll see." All the girls and boys did think Mr. Cool was a great band. They thought they were brilliant, terrific, fantastic. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin sang. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin danced. Ricky and Mickey and Nicky and Kevin posed in their new stage outfits. Kevin chatted to the audience. "Hope you're having a great time," he said, and he smiled. He saw his Nan at the back. He waved. Nan waved back, and all the girls and the boys waved too. "We're having a great time, Kevin," they yelled. "We love Mr. Cool. We love Ricky. We love Mickey. We love Nicky. And most of all, we love you, Kevin. We think you're great." Kevin smiled and smiled and smiled.